The gala was a grand affair, filled with flashing cameras, elegant gowns, and conversations that hummed like background noise, blending into a melody of wealth and status. It was the kind of event where appearances mattered more than sincerity, where alliances were built over champagne flutes and polite smiles hid sharp intentions. For Barron Trump, it was just another night of playing a role. He never auditioned for a character whose lines were written long before he was old enough to understand them. Standing near the towering glass windows, he gazed out at the sprawling New York skyline. The city stretched endlessly, glittering with life and possibility, a stark contrast to the suffocating world inside the ballroom. His own reflection faintly hovered against the glass, a ghostly version of himself, the face that had been captured, dissected, and repurposed by strangers for as long as he could remember. Behind him, his father, Donald Trump, stood at the centre of the room, a gravitational force drawing in power brokers, celebrities, and social climbers. People clung to his every word, laughed a beat too loud at his jokes, eager to be close enough to claim they were part of his orbit. His presence filled the room, leaving little space for anyone else, least of all Barron. Barron had long since memorized the choreography of these nights. Stand tall, smile if asked, but never too wide. Appear interested, but not too eager. Above all, be seen a reminder that the next generation of the Trump legacy stood silently, obediently at the edge of the frame. Cameras flashed, capturing his face like a riddle for the world to decode. And, as always, the same questions would follow. Why does Barron Trump always look so sad? But tonight, for the first time, someone asked him directly, "Barron?" He turned slightly, caught off guard by the soft voice. A young woman stood a few feet away, her presence quiet but deliberate. Caroline. He'd seen her before, a journalist known more for her listening than her intrusiveness. Her notebook was absent, her camera tucked away. There was something disarming about her, as if she had stepped outside the machinery of the press just long enough to be human. "I hope you don't mind me asking," she began, her voice careful, "but people always wonder, why do you look so sad?" He could have brushed her off. He'd done it 100 times before, with a practiced smile or a polite nod that answered nothing. But tonight something cracked inside him. Maybe it was exhaustion, maybe it was the weight of being invisible in a room where everyone saw him. Maybe it was just time. "It's not sadness," he said quietly. "It's exhaustion." Caroline didn't press. She just waited, her silence an invitation. The kind so rare in Barron's life that it felt almost foreign. And so he let himself speak. "You have no idea what it's like," he said, his voice low and steady, though there was something brittle beneath it. "Every day, from the second I wake up, I know that nothing I do belongs to me. My face, my posture, even my silence, it's all public property." He stared out at the skyline again, the city's heartbeat so distant from the forced warmth of the room behind him. "When I was younger, I thought if I just acted normal, people would stop seeing me as some kind of symbol. But they don't. They see the name first. They see a story they've already written in their heads. And no matter what I do, I fit into that story, whether I want to or not." He turned toward her, his face both blank and brimming with unspoken words. "If I smile, it's fake. If I frown, I'm miserable. If I say nothing, they write entire think pieces about what I'm hiding. I can't win. I'm not allowed to just be." The bitterness in his laugh was almost gentle, as though it had been worn smooth by time. "And when I'm with my father, it's even worse. I disappear entirely. I'm not Barron anymore. I'm just Trump's son. If I stand beside him, they say I'm just like him. If I don't, they say I hate him. If I say anything, they pick apart every word until it's unrecognizable. No one cares who I actually am. They just need me to fit the version of me they've already created." He looked down, his fingers curling slightly against his palm, nails pressing into skin just enough to feel real. "I didn't choose this life," he said softly. I didn't ask to be born into a name that turns me into a story before I even open my mouth. But it doesn't matter, I still have to live with it. The words hung between them, the weight of them filling the air until it felt like there was barely room to breathe. Do you know what it's like to never be allowed to have a bad day? His voice cracked, so quietly it might have been missed if Caroline wasn't listening so closely. To never be able to trip or stutter without it becoming evidence of some deep hidden trauma. I could wake up with a headache and by noon the headlines would say I'm unravelling. I could stand silently beside my father thinking about absolutely nothing, and by the next morning there'd be think pieces about my silent rebellion. He swallowed hard, his jaw tightening against the swell of frustration rising in his throat. The worst part, his voice was nearly a whisper now, the world doesn't want the truth, they want a story, and I don't get to choose what that story is. Caroline felt her stomach knot. She had chased stories for years, following breadcrumbs left by moments just like this, a glance, a sigh, a single captured expression. How many times had she written about someone without knowing them at all? How often had she been part of the very machine that stripped people down to caricatures? Do you ever wish things were different? She asked softly. Barron's laugh was quiet, almost too quiet to be called a laugh at all. The next morning, as expected, his face was everywhere, his expression, his posture dissected frame by frame. Barron Trump looks miserable at gala. Is Barron Trump breaking free? Armchair psychologists filled the comments, each certain they knew the full truth from a single photo. But Caroline couldn't bring herself to write the story. She sat at her desk staring at her notes, haunted by Barron's voice. For the first time, the weight of her profession felt unbearable. How many times had she reduced someone to a headline? How many times had she filled in blanks with assumptions and passed it off as insight? She thought of all those awkward photos of Barron from over the years, the ones turned into memes, the ones analysed like ancient texts, each one a frozen second in a life no one actually knew, each one twisted to fit the audience's need for drama. She closed her laptop. Barron had been right. The world didn't want the truth. They wanted a story, and for once she couldn't give it to them. Barron Trump's story is more than just a glimpse into the life of a famous family. It's a mirror held up to society, forcing us to confront an uncomfortable truth. How often do we look at someone's face, someone we've never met, and think we know their entire story? How often do we fill in the blanks with our own assumptions, creating narratives based on nothing more than a single expression or a fleeting moment captured by a camera? In Barron's case, the world decided who he was before he ever had a chance to speak for himself. But is that so different from what we all do to people in our own lives? Classmates, co-workers, even strangers on the street. Are we truly seeing them, or are we seeing what we expect to see? This story reminds us that being born into privilege doesn't erase the basic human need to be understood. Behind the wealth, the headlines, and the famous last name is still a young man, a son, a student, a human being who never asked to become a symbol. How many times have we assumed someone with wealth or status must automatically be happy, confident, or immune to struggle? It also challenges us to think about the price of constant visibility. In an age where every moment can be captured, shared, and dissected, do any of us truly own our stories anymore? If someone took a single photo of you mid-thought, mid-frown, mid-laugh, would it capture who you really are? Or would it just become another distorted version of your truth, shaped by people who know nothing about you? If you enjoyed the story and found it meaningful, don't forget to leave a like. It really helps us reach more people. We'd also love to hear from you. Share your thoughts and the lessons you've learned in the comments below. Your insights could inspire someone else.